Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Hayes Software System Understanding Audits and TIPWeb-IT four-part series. This morning, we're going to be covering part one, which is all about planning your audit. My name is Gina Blankenship. I'm a trainer and consultant with Hayes Software Systems. I've been doing that for 2.5 years, and prior to that, I was the director of technology at a school district in southern New Mexico for 20 years. And the last 4 of those years, we were customers of Hayes software. We were running TIPWeb-IT. So I used that software implementation for the last 4 years of my career in the district before coming into Hayes software as a consultant and training both TIPWeb-IT and Get Help systems. So just to let you know that our four-part series will be recorded and uploaded to our support center. We should have it in place by tomorrow. And you can also find the handouts for each session at this same location. So if you go to support.haysoft.com and search Audits-4-part series, you'll find this page. Also, let me include this in the link in the chat so that you can go ahead and have access to that. As we work our way through the processes in this webinar. And I'll be bringing those up during the presentation as well so that we can discuss them if need be. So one of the first things that we need to know when we start thinking about planning our audits. The first thing that comes to mind to me is we need a definition for what is an audit. How can I plan an audit if I don't understand what that audit is? So at its highest level, really, our audits are official inspections of our assets. So we want to be able to go through the district and officially see all of the assets. We use audits also to verify that the list we have of our assets really is what we have. So we think we have XYZ, and the audit verifies that we do indeed have XYZ. We also want to make sure that we're capturing our asset location. So not only do I have this specific desktop and its tag number X and serial number ADC, but it is physically located at the high school in room 10. So this is why we audit. When we go through the audit process, this official big audit process once a year, what we're doing is we're being good stewards of our resources, and we are also setting up our data to be able to inform the district for things like budgeting and distribution of resources. So really, in the big scheme of things, there are 3 parts to every audit. We need preparation, which is what this session today is going to be covering, talking about our preparation for our audits. We need the actual audit process itself. I know we need to reconcile what we got from the audit. So the actual audit is going through room by room and scanning all the assets into the system. And then reconciliation of that data is where we go through and we decide, okay, what action are we going to take against this asset because in the system we had recorded in room 15, but when we scanned, we actually found it in room 10. What are we going to do with that information? So that is all what we see with the reconciliation process. So that being said, I want to start talking about the preparation stage, about the strategic plan. So we're not going to spend time in the actual application today. We're going to do that in our next session. What we're going to talk about now is how do we gather everything we need to gather? How do we pull together this huge thing? Number one, how do we get buy-in from the district? How do we make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody understands how important audits can be? So number one, we need to understand that audits are a big deal and we need to treat them as such. So we're going to go out and we're going to start talking about this coming audit. The audit is coming. We're going to go out. We're going to see what we have. We're going to verify that we're going to have it. We're going to get so much good from this process. We need to get almost the whole district to see how seriously we're taking this audit. And we just need to step up there, get this plan going, and get the audit done. And the more confident, I guess, confident or sure you are in your process, the better that the whole district is going to receive that. So we're going to treat the audit like a big deal. And one of the first things we're going to do is gather a team that's going to design or define the framework for this audit. So people on this team are going to be our stakeholders for the audit, right? And we can talk about who that specifically might be. In the beginning, the team is going to be people with big umbrellas of responsibility, and also people all the way down. We want somebody at the site level that knows what's happening at that site as well. So we want a team that is representative of the district, but doesn't get so big that it makes things a little more difficult. So that team is going to sit down together and define the scope of the audit. So when are we going to do it, and what do we need? What kind of things do we need in place in order to do that? And as they're defining the scope of the audit, they're also going to be working on that process by which we communicate the scope, we communicate the plan, we communicate the goals of this audit and what we're going to do. So that's all part of putting together this plan to have this great big deal, this audit that we're going to accomplish. So then the team is also going to put together a list of what is going to be needed to accomplish this audit and how they're going to have those things at their fingertips of the teams that are in place. So let's start by talking about that scope of work. So how do we define the scope of work for an audit? And what does it even mean, scope of work, when we're talking about that? So in the beginning, we're going to be talking about what products are we going to audit? So as we know at TIPWeb-IT, all the inventory is categorized in this kind of 10,000 foot overview look of what types of products are there. There's desktops, and there's printers, and there's buses, and there's laptops, and there's tablets. So based on that, those umbrella generic descriptions, what exactly is this particular audit going to be doing? Are we going to be scanning every single asset in the district? Or are we just going to pull out laptops and printers and only audit those specific products? So also within the scope of work is the where. Where are we going to accomplish or do this audit? Are we going to do this at the high school or at all of our sites in the district? This is going to change the amount of time that it might take, depending, right? So even when we decide on those sites, so what are we going to do inside those sites? Remember, every single asset in TIPWeb-IT is located or assigned to an endpoint that is a room, a staff, or a student. Are we planning on auditing every room, every staff member, and every student in the same audit, or are we going to split those out? So these are the functionalities we have within the audit. And these types of decisions, once they're made, are going to change how the district approaches the audit, how much time it takes to do the audit, and so on. So once we know what and where, then we need to know when. When are we going to get this audit going, right? So the trick here is to start with the big picture. The three of these categories, the what, where, and when, they kind of go together, and these are going to be the things that you're going to talk with on that very first meeting you have with your leadership team, with your audit team. So they're going to start to provide you with this big picture, and then we're going to narrow that big picture down to specifics. So before we get too far, let me jump back a screen here. With this big picture, we need to start now with some documentation. So how are you going to keep track of what's happening here and have that help with your plan? There's some resources on the link that I provided earlier. And let's start with this district audit calendar example. So let's say we're having our first meeting and we're starting to talk about what are we going to audit and where are we going to audit and when are we going to audit. Those types of things can start to be put into a calendar source. It can be on your whiteboard. It can be a digital thing where I'm just starting to kind of generically lay out the whole big picture. We've decided we're going to do our audit between Thanksgiving break and Christmas break. So here's our starting point. Here's our end point. Now we have narrowed the whole year down to a couple of weeks. So now how does that couple of weeks look? How many schools do we think we can get audited in a day? And how many teams, audit teams, do we need to have at each site in order to accomplish that, and so on. So we're starting to build this calendar out. And it's going to be this very fluid calendar because you're going to learn things all along the way that make you change. It's like, oh, we can't do the high school that day. They're testing all day long. Or, oh, we can't do that elementary school because half the, they're doing a field day that day. Or maybe that's a great day to do it because they're doing a field day and all the kids are going to be outside. So there's different reasons that this calendar will change. So this is kind of where you can start to pull all of that together. This answers the where and it answers the when. And it starts to answer the who as well. So that's kind of a great way to start that particular discussion. So once we have that started, we can start talking about our communication to stakeholders. So how are we going to let everyone know? And then who is everyone, right? So who are our stakeholders? Who needs to be involved in this audit and at what point? A lot of people in the district are going to be involved in this audit. Almost everyone in the district is going to be involved in this audit in some way, shape, or form. Some people are going to be leading the charge, and some people are going to be in there scanning assets, and some people are going to be just aware that it's happening so they can help arrange the schedule for the site, or they just know that their classroom is going to be interrupted or so on. So stakeholders can be almost everyone in your district. So once you decide who those stakeholders are and identify them by groups, then we can start talking about what's the most effective method of communication to actually communicate with these stakeholders. So what works best in your district? Is it email or written memo? Is it the announcement system? Is it some sort of a collaboration platform like Teams? What is it? How does your district best communicate? And that answer could be different depending on the site, right? All of our sites have different levels and different things that they do for communication. So it could be different. So these conversations have to happen. And they're also going to be talking about not only how you're going to communicate, but what is it that they need to know? What is it? They need to know what we're doing, when we're doing, where we're doing it, and how we're going to accomplish it. And each of your stakeholder groups are going to need a little bit different information in each one of those categories. And at each point of the communication plan, there's going to be different methods that we use to communicate. So the night before an audit in a site, right before the teachers are dismissed, it might be worth an effort to have the principal make an announcement, a reminder, hey teachers, we're having our audit tomorrow. Don't forget to bring in any items that were issued to you from your home. Make sure they're here on site. And of course, prior to that announcement, we've sent emails out with the same kind of reminders. So we're going to disseminate the same information over and over and over again, just to make sure that everyone gets into the loop. So then it becomes, well, when do we need to communicate to them? Do the principals need to know 3 months ahead of time that we're planning to do an audit in their building over this time frame? Are they going to be allowed to provide any feedback on what works best for their building? Or are we just going to give them a time frame and say, here it is, and just adjust if somebody comes back with a really good reason why we shouldn't be auditing? So we need to identify on a really nice, clear timeline, exactly what we're going to do and when we're going to do it, so that everybody's in control. So when's that first communication go out? When does the supporting communication for that one go out? When does that first communication go to the teachers? When do we support that with a secondary backup and those sorts of things? It's all part of writing that plan. So once we're done with that, then we start to think about our resources. What are we going to need to complete these resources? So we have people, devices, special instructions, and those little things, other things that matter. So let's talk about the people for a minute. So thinking about people as a resource, we're going to focus specifically on those people that are actually doing the audit. Now, these are the folks that are walking room to room and scanning assets. What is it that they do at each site? And is there a way that we can define what each role is at the site? So let's say we had a team of 3 people at each site. So we have the team lead, and that person is the one that makes sure, double sure that everyone on site knows the schedule. That team lead also puts together a map of some sort to help the scanning teams know where they're being, because we can assume that we're going to have someone in the building that's not as familiar with the building to be able to just come in and take over. Then we're going to have what I would call the actual scanning team, which would be the person that does quality assurance and the auditor. So 2 people per scanning team. If we have a large school, we might send 2 teams into that school and split the site. So say maybe it's a 2-story school. Team A is upstairs, team B is downstairs. Or it's one big school and we start in the middle and team A goes this way and team B goes this way. So that scanning team has an auditor, and that's the person who's carrying the scanner. They have a laptop, they're in TIPWeb-IT as a software, and they're simply scanning tags right into the audit. And then they have a partner with them that does quality assurance. So that person is going to help get to barcodes. So sometimes we have things that are all jammed up against the wall, and maybe they can hold the monitor out so the scanner can get to it, or so on and so forth. They're going to go a little bit ahead of the scanner so that they can make sure that the way to the barcodes is clear. They can make sure cabinets are opened and that there's a ladder ready to get to the projector or something to that effect. So between the team lead who manages 1 or more scanning teams in the site and the scanning team itself, we get the whole building done. Now, we might have a small site where one person is all 3 of those, right? We may have a site where a team lead and an auditor are the same person, or vice versa. So it just depends on your site and the amount of resources you can pull, but we can always pull resources if we're being very communicative up front. We can go reach out to school sites and say, hey, I'm going to need at least 1 person from your site to be part of the scanning team. Who can you give me? So anybody can scan or do the quality assurance piece in the site, depending on how that site wants to put things together. So that brings us to devices. What kind of devices are we going to need? We're going to need scanners. We're going to need laptops. We're going to need maybe mobile devices to do this, to get this done properly. So if we decide that we're going to use 2 scanning teams per site, and we're going to do this all in 1 week, do we have enough scanners and laptops or mobile devices available to do the job? So we're going to make sure that that particular thing is taken care of as part of the planning process. But what about those special instructions? So you'll see as you start to plan this audit, you're going to need to address these special situations, things that come up during the audit, like, oh, I scanned this asset and TIPWeb-IT tells me that it can't find that asset, which means that particular asset with that tag number is not in the TIPWeb database. What do I do? Oh, look, the asset shows as misplaced. What does that mean? As that audit team on site, I need to know what I do in this situation. Or if I get a message from, if I'm done scanning my whole building and come back and we look in the audit and show a lot of missing tags. What do I do about that? How do I approach that? So then we start to look at all the little things that make a difference, that make it easier for these teams to get into the buildings and actually do things. So how do I log into the Wi-Fi for that site? Do I have extra asset labels? If my scanning team is going to also plug on asset labels on things that are missing asset labels, then they need to have those on hand so they don't get slowed down in the process. What about Post-it notes? Just so that I can make notes, or a certain notebook or a way to do things, or any kind of template that I might need to have on hand. Let's say one of my instructions for assets not found in TIPWeb-IT is to put the information into a spreadsheet and then turn that spreadsheet in later on to the district so that those assets can be added correctly. Then I need that template. Ladders, keys, those kinds of things that we need to think about. So this plan is going to kind of work to pull all of that type of information together in order to make sure that everybody's on the same page, everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, and we just kind of get through this whole process a little bit smoother. Now this can take, depending on how often your team meets and how well they go out and do whatever, so my core team is gonna go out and complete tasks in their area and get information from other stakeholders out there and then pull it back together for the next meeting. And as we meet each time, this should get tighter and tighter and tighter. So in the first time you ever do this, I would plan on meeting with that core team no less than 5 times. And then as you get better at it, this is a document that you can refer to for a while. So thinking about what comes, what's left now? Well, your plan is a living document. So every single time your planning team gets together, they're going to review their plan and talk about what they did when they went out and explored what's happening at the sites. And then they come back together and they take the information that they gathered and they adjust and they put that back into the plan. And then we go back out and explore and so on. So it's a cyclic thing that happens. So remember, the plan is a living document. Every year you're going to get better at this, and it's going to take less effort to do this. So there's some things that we should know about during the planning process. Let's see, I think I'll add that to the Q&A session. So I'm just going to plug in a question myself here that I'm going to answer in a moment. Okay, so once we are completely through with this particular session, we have the following session tomorrow that will cover part 2 of our Understanding Audit series. We're going to be talking about how to actually conduct the audit. We're going to get into the application itself and go through the process of conducting an audit so that you'll see how it happens within the document. And you'll see why this plan is so important so that you're not trying to scramble and answer these questions during the audit. We do that tomorrow, January 20th at 10 a.m. Then part 3 on January 21st at 1 p.m. Central, we're going to be doing reconciling your audit, which is the 3rd part. So after we conduct an audit, we reconcile it. And then part 4 comes on January 26th at 1 p.m. Central. We're going to do staff run audits with a special way within TIPWeb-IT that we can push some of the scanning, that scanning responsibility out to the individual staff members who are maybe responsible for a room or have been issued specific items. So that's what's coming down the pike. So now I want to come back a little bit and share the other resources with you that were on the site that I gave you those links in the beginning. So the best practices for audits document is a very detailed version of what I've given you here in a summary. So it breaks down each one of these sections that we have talked about and gives you guidance on what you're looking for when you're doing your scope of audit, what you're looking for when you're determining your stakeholders, and so on. So it's a fairly long and fairly detailed document about how you can continue on. And this is a great thing to use for your planning process. So you can take this particular plan and just fill in the details basically. So it's all says, calculate the lead time needed to communicate with stakeholders. So then you can come in right here and plug in a little table that shows the lead time. So you can put your plan together right using this document as your framework. Now there's something also called the TIPWeb-IT Audit Checklist. The audit checklist is going to take the entire audit process and just break it into specific steps for you. So you can basically go down the checklist and go, yep, preparation, strategic planning, scope of work, communication plan, compile, check, 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 check. Right? So this is kind of a way for you to just make sure you're not skipping any steps. So now something after you do your plan, your overall plan, you're going to take this, it's going to be a pretty long document. You're going to find a way to summarize what you've decided to do within each audit for that site team. So remember, we have a site team made up of 2 people that are scanning and possibly a lead. If there are more than one scanning team, then that lead comes in to managing both. So we have this site audit plan example for you to just kind of take a look at. You can create a document like this or something similar that makes more sense to you. This gives you an idea of the information you might want to put together as you finalize that plan and finalize the audits, dates and schedules. So each individual site can have something like this that gives the scanning team or teams a very quick reference. This one page gives them everything that they need to know. So they'll have the site and the audit name so that they know in TIPWeb-IT what the audit name is. They'll have a listing of who's the site leader, who's scanning team A, the site leader and the district tech. Okay, one of them is going to be the auditor, the other is going to be quality assurance. And then we have a second team here, a visiting tech and a district tech, and one of them is auditor and one of them is quality assurance. Then we have a support coordinator that they can call if they need anything that they need right now. So we don't want them to have to put off their audit because they got stumbled on something. So we need somebody, maybe at the technology center or whoever's running the audit to begin with, we need somebody available when these guys are on site that they can call. Hey, I need a new catalog added to the database or so on. And then we can say, okay, you're going to meet here pre-audit meeting, right? At this time, in this location, in the site. And then here's some things that you need to remember about the audit. So each team should have a map with a route. After you log in, make sure you take these steps. Pretty basic, like even, hey, this is how you're going to approach each room. You're going to walk in the door and turn to the right and scan everything along the wall and then look to the middle and then look up and get those things that are mounted higher up. So it just gives them something to very quickly reference. When you think you're done, mark the room as finished, meet in a designated area to review and make sure you're really done. Don't just leave the building. Be very organized about the process. And then instructions for dealing with stuff that comes up during the audit. So if I have an item status that says tag not in system, then what should I do? Try searching by serial number. And if you still don't find it, then enter this information into a spreadsheet. What if the item is misplaced? Well, if it was a room, do this. If it was because of a staff, do this, and so on. So then you get their instructions on this one-page document that they can refer to very quickly. Then there might be some site notes. So whoever is the team lead for that site is able to put together some information about the site. Maybe they're having testing in the lab. So, hey, can you get this particular room before school starts or after school's over, or maybe during lunch? So those types of things that are happening at the site at the same time of your audit that you don't want your audit team to interrupt, or would cause a little bit of heartache for the audit team, or heartache to the classroom, then you're going to put that information there. And then on the back of the page, you can put a map of the building so that it would show the flow. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to go from here this way and then this way until I'm done with every single room. And as I walk through the room, if I'm a one scan audit for my site, then I can just check off each room as I'm done. If I'm a 2-team scanning, then we can split right down the middle and give each team a direction to go, sort of thing. So these really help with those folks that are not familiar with the layout of the building so much as the people that work there, and it can give them direction to go in. So take a look at those 4 resources. I think they really help you in your planning. And then plan on coming back to the other parts in the series so that you can get that complete look at how audits work. So at this point, we do have a training survey, and I'll put the link right now in the chat session, and hope that you will give us some feedback on the training, give us some thoughts on what you think you might want to see in the other sessions. Let me put that in the chat here for you. Here we go. Sorry about that. And so while we're doing that, also I want to take some questions. So what kind of questions do you have about the situation, about the presentation that we've done, and about planning for your audit that we can talk about in the meantime? And yeah, hang around and listen to the question and answer session. If you want to put in the questions and answers portion or the chat portion of our meeting, or just unmute yourself and holler out the question, either way you want to do it, be fine by me. So Angela is asking if the administrators at each site only have the view permissions, and you want to add the audit to their site, what all information does this give and what access to change things? So I'm assuming that you're saying, okay, I might have a principal, for example, we've given them view only access to their inventory, but they're going to be a part of the audit. They're going to actually take part in the audit and go and scan assets. So if that's the case, then what you'll want to do is part of your plan will be deciding what kind of permissions that you want to give those people who are going to help you with the audit. So auditors do have to have some specific permissions, and Darla is asking, and what permissions do you give them? So auditors basically need to be able to create rooms, do room-to-room transfers, and collect items that have been issued out to staff or students. So one of the ways you can do that is to create a user permissions template within TIPWeb-IT and set up those specific permissions. So you could call it auditors or something like that. And then apply that template to the permissions for those folks temporarily during the audit. And then when the audit's done, you can pull that template off and put them so that they're back to the way they were configured prior to the audit. So another question that I have here, is there a way to upload an external audit into Hays? For example, since we can't get into our schools to perform the audit, we're going to download a list from IT that shows all computers that have accessed the district network. So can we upload the found tags into Hays? So right now, at the current time, there is no way to upload the results of an external audit into the system. So the audit process is designed to be a completely internal process where each asset is scanned individually into the audit. So there has recently been an update that allows districts that have MDM systems to integrate those MDM systems with TIPWeb-IT. So basically what happens is the MDM system will go out and see a asset, and then some of the stuff that MDM system collects from the asset, like the serial number and the hardware address and so on, that can get dumped into the inventory system, into those fields. But right now that process is completely outside of the audits process. They don't really work together. So if you're interested in submitting a feature request, then please do so. Send an email. You can send it to myself and I'll forward it on, or send it to support. It says, hey, we would really love to be able to use our MDM system in conjunction with audits in order to get those audits done. And so what should I know? Oh, wait a minute, sorry. So Cassie is asking, when performing a room audit that is not part of the initiated site audit, can you include staff issued inventory? The way I understand that question, I'm going to say no. So room audits that are done independent of a site audit cannot include staff issued items. But when we do a site audit, we can include both rooms and staff, which would pull that, you know, as long as you have your rooms set up so the staff is assigned to the room, then when we do the audit and we include both rooms and staff, then those items issued to the staff member kind of get, when you scan them, they're verified in the correct way. But if you're doing room audits that are, those are independent of the site initiated audit, then the staff link is not there. So then the question that I added to the end, there is, so what should I know about what needs to be done prior to an audit? So now I'm referring specifically to inside the system. So the number one thing that I think you should remember here about site audits is that an asset can only reside in one audit at any given time. So one of the things that you can start to do prior to opening a new group of audits is to make sure that there are no other active audits happening in the system. So if you have sites that normally do room audits, you'll want to make sure that they are closing those room audits out prior to you starting the district-wide or the site initiated, district initiated audits for each site. So make sure that those individual audits are not happening. Part of your communications plan, right? Let those sites know. Don't do any independent room audits. Make sure if you do, you open them and finish them in the same time frame. Because as of this date, you will not be able to open a new room audit until we're finished with our audits. And so that's when, so say, let's say you're just auditing classrooms, then if it's not a classroom, if it's an office, they can do a room audit, but both can't be done at the same time. Another thing that needs to be done prior to initiating any audits is all transfers from one site to another need to be completed. So part of your communication plan needs to include the fact that no new transfers after a certain date. So, the day you open the audit or the day before, whatever you think will work best for your situation. Some districts do an awful lot of site-to-site transfers because of warehouses and stuff. And any of those site-to-site transfers that have been initiated will need to be completed or received prior to initiating the audits. Those transfers can cause some trouble in your audits, so you want to make sure that those two things are taken care of. So no new initiation of site-to-site transfers once an audit has been opened, and before the audit is open, please make sure that you complete and receive any open transfers. Okay, so I don't see any new questions out there. I appreciate your feedback on the survey. I thank you guys so much for your time today, and I hope to see you tomorrow at our 4-part audit series, part 2, conducting your audit. Thank you, everyone.